Resiliency is a great characteristic, but it's not necessarily healthy to be resilient all the time. So what can we do? We can save ourselves. We can take care of ourselves. We can work on, first of all, psychological safety.
Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Welcome to the show, friend. I am excited to have my new best friend, Andy, with us today. And we're going to talk about a topic that doesn't get discussed a lot. And we talk on this show a lot about the bully inside of us, that voice that just keeps coming. But sometimes that bully isn't inside of us, and it comes from the external world. And how, when it's somebody in the office and we need so bad to keep our job because we're holding down the household, and if we leave, how are we going to pay for everything? Maybe we'll end up on the streets. And you just feel stuck, but you're not being treated like you would want to be treated or how you are treating your employees. And I know for me, I was one that tried to shield the people under me from that toxicity. Can't even say it. So I know it happens. I've lived it. I've been there. But Andy's taken the time to research it, look into it, and really pull all the information together. And so, Andy, I'm really excited to have you here because this is a topic we don't talk about. And it's something that we kind of hide from or are ashamed of. And when can you hold up your head and say, this isn't for me, I'm out of here? When you've got a mortgage and you've got kids going to college and you've got car payments, you're stuck. And so you keep dealing with it. And so, Andy, before we get started, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsor. When we come back, help us recognize it, identify it, and what do we do about it? So we'll be right back.
Hey, since I rarely have openings in my coaching schedule, I have a new resource out there on my website. It is called the BFF Coaching Network. And I have offered a spot there for any coach that has been on the show to list their coaching. You can go out there, you can listen to their episodes, you can feel a little bit about them, and then choose a coach that will work for you. So LaraJaneLayton.com, the BFF Coaching Network.
All right, Andy, the information about you is in the show notes. So really, I know that I always just called it toxic people. Never really thought about it as bullying, but as you reflect and we talk about it, it's like, yeah, it was a form of bullying where people, maybe they were threatened, maybe, I don't know why, but you get put down, and never from their face, always comes down through another boss. You need to be changing this, or and you're like, who said that? So how do we get through it? I mean, other than just flat out walking out.
Well, by the way, very pleased to be with you and thrilled to be your new best friend. Thank you. Look, as you suggested, most of us do not have the luxury of just walking out. And I want to be clear that what we're talking about is not the kind of employee that shows up late, doesn't care about work, very apathetic, doesn't do assignments on time. Those are not generally the people who are bullied. Those of us who have been bullied, and most of us have at one time or another, because we're competent, because we're devoted and loyal and productive, that we get, and especially collegial, it's about being a team player, that the bosses who don't have empathy, who don't know how to do that, it bothers them when they see that we are that way, that we're popular in the workplace. And so when it starts, you might not recognize it. And I should say here, my definition, very simply, and we can talk more about this, but just to set the tone here, Lara Jane, I look at bullying not as tough love. If you think your boss cares about you and has your future in mind, that's not bullying, even if they're tough on you. This is targeted mismanagement, repeated targeted behaviors that have no benefit to the employee or the business. And we know it when we see it. And also, if you think you're being bullied, you probably are, because it happens when you least expect it. And that's the problem. You never know when the next text, email, phone call, meeting is going to happen. And then you start to be hyper vigilant and you start to lose self-esteem, and all kinds of physical problems occur from it. This is really damaging. It's harmful to employees. And if you're a boss, supervisor, manager, let's even assume for purposes of this conversation, Laura Jane, that the boss doesn't care about his employees. Hard to believe, but okay. The boss should at least care about the business. And bullying and toxic cultures damage businesses as much as they harm employees.
I agree. Just thinking of my own situation, we had tons of people finding new jobs and leaving. They'd hold on long enough to have that new job in hand, but their resumes were out and they were actively looking to get out of the situation. And this was, a small amount of people in a large organization causing major people leaving. And I know when I had my exit interview and I was talking to HR, she literally said, "I've heard this over and over, and there's nothing I can do about it."
That's the unbelievable thing about this and why I'm so pleased to be on your show, because there are things we can do. Now, HR departments usually don't have the autonomy to do something about it. Why? Because the person doing the bullying is often writing the checks. So I get that, but that's why we have to have this dialogue. We have to stop making this issue taboo, and especially because there's so much shame involved for anybody. And again, I don't work in the childhood bullying space. There's plenty of people that do that. There's not many, actually, not that many in this country who are in the anti-workplace bullying arena, if you will. And so it's important, so important for us to have this dialogue and make the bullied victims know that they're not alone and it's not their fault, and get away from that self-blame game. Because in the history of the workplace, thousands of years, there's not one employee that's ever asked to be bullied or mistreated. And we have to make it such that we can talk about this and we can help these companies where the HR people are saying, sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. And so that when they go to HR, there is something that can be done, because it is so hurtful and so damaging.
So what is like the definition of how do I know you kind of said it's not the tough love, but how do I know if it's bullying or just someone who just doesn't like me?
Well, first of all, that is bad management if the boss or supervisor. And look, I was an executive producer in television. I had teams of 50. I had teams all over the world. And there were people that I liked better than others. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. But if you treat somebody in a harsh fashion because you don't like them, that's bullying. Okay? And so the kinds of things that occur, for instance, are and this gets into the damage to the business, right? What happens? We end up going to the other uh, Carol or the other office, and saying to our colleague, "Did you see what happened to Jane? Did you see how mean the boy?" And so people start gossiping about the toxicity, and so now they're not working. Or if they're not talking to a colleague about what just happened and how bad it was, either that it happened to them or somebody else, they're sitting at their desk going, "Oh my gosh, I feel scared. I've lost my psychological safety." Or I saw, Louise, what happened to her, and if it happens to her, it might happen to me. So now I'm not at my full pace. I've lost production, and I'm sitting there worrying about my future, and I'm not getting things done. So if it starts to inhibit your ability to perform at your best, and none of us are at our best all the time, but it starts to infringe on our ability to focus on our work, that's bullying. Again, not if you screwed something up, but the fact is, we all make mistakes. If millions of dollars are flowing into businesses every day or every month, and there's milk and honey in the hallways, you're probably not going to have a lot of problems. But that's not the real world we live in. There is conflict, right? we do like people more than others, and it's incumbent upon bosses to identify that and treat people with dignity and integrity and make them better, not make them worse. So if you're at work and you feel bad, if you're worried about your safety, if you go home and you hear the boss on your shoulder, Laura Jane, or the boss is renting space in your head, which often happens, and you lose self-esteem, you lose joy, you lose the ability to appreciate your family and your friends, that's when you know you're being bullied, especially if you can say to yourself, I'm a good person and I'm doing good work. That's the kind of interpersonal part of it beyond what the boss is doing. And again, I was a boss. None of us are flawless. We get mad. We get hangry. We have low blood sugar. Bully bosses, and in my case, I had bully bosses that never apologized, never acknowledged their own mistakes, blamed other people. Those are bully bosses. They're not the ones and bully bosses are allowed to get mad, to get angry, even inappropriately, as long as they go to Louise or Jane or Sally and say, hey, my bad. I was having a bad day. My fault. I apologize. Let's repair the relationship and move on. Those are not the bullies that do that. Bullies are the ones that don't care and just move on to the next victim.
So what are my options? I mean, it's not against law to be an asshole.
No, right. Okay, well said. I'm glad you said it, not me. I wasn't sure that kind of language was allowed on your show.
I'll mark it as this one's one of those that has
Okay,
it. But
fine.
but I don't know another way. I mean,
Right.
they're just literally trying to make your life harder. So what can I do about it other than give up and walk out?
Yeah. So let me say this. You're right about making your life harder because it goes so much deeper, and all of the people in your audience know this if it's happened to them, and it likely has. Work is kind of like high school in that you want to be popular at work, right? You want people to like you. You want to kind of get awards, but popularity means everything. And the minute the boss comes after you, you're not just not popular anymore. You become kind of a pariah. The scarlet letter, if you will. They've been marked. Even if your colleagues know, I like her, the boss has identified that he or she doesn't like her, and all of a sudden they're not popular. And we all need a feeling of belonging. So that's the first and most damaging thing. It's not just that they're hurting you, they're damaging your soul, because we all have this kind of inherent need to be someone who belongs. We want to belong at work. Doesn't mean we all have to be the big boss. Some of us like managing, some of us don't. But when you find your place in whatever level you're at, and that's part of the problem, anybody at any level can be bullied. Lowest levels, highest levels, okay? And it happens to women, men, any color, doesn't matter what your salary is. And that's why I love this issue, because we're in this together. We're in this together. It can happen to anybody, and it does happen to anybody. And so when that damage starts, there's not that much you can do, but I will tell you what I don't do. I'll start with what I don't do, if you don't mind, Laura.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, what I don't do is spend a lot of time diagnosing bully bosses, and I'll tell you why. And I coach people in this circumstance, bullied victims. And if I said, oh, here's what you do. Well, I'm not in that workplace. I don't know the bully. I don't know if the bully had a bad day with their wife, husband, girlfriend, partner, child. I don't know if their mother was mean to them when they were 5. I don't know if they're sadists, masochists. I don't know. And you know what? For the most part, not completely, I don't really care. It doesn't matter why they are mean. And keep in mind, these are the people that are working 8, 10, 12 hours a day to make the boss look good. I created a television show that made millions of dollars for my boss. I created it. It went on NBC. Do you think that with the millions of dollars that were coming in from this show, that he would have thanked me? I never got a thank you, ever. Now, he paid me, and he employed me, and I appreciated that. But most of us want more and need more than a paycheck.
Well, one of our foundational emotional needs is safety. And that's when you're not safe, there's nothing else worth having. Safety is that core thing. And how to become safe when you're in a non-safe place is kind of scary.
It's awful. It's not, we call it psychological safety, correct. But again, and you talked about it earlier, it's that how am I going to pay my bills? And I was in the control room. We were about 2 weeks before the show was going to debut across the country. And, almost like a red phone, that you hear about, he had from his office, a direct line to the control room where I was getting the show ready. And he would scream at me and threaten to fire me, you know. And there wasn't anything wrong maybe he didn't like a script, maybe he didn't like a word in a script. That's what you do in work. You do things, and if there's something that the boss doesn't like, they don't have to yell and scream. I was trying my best, and I was being very successful at it. So you can't live that way. It's so hard to live that way. And
So
so
it
I don't
sounds
yeah.
it sounds like that if you're not sure if it's bullying or not, it sounds like it's irrational and non-communicative, where someone who's constructively trying to help you is going to bring something up and give you an opportunity to dialogue, to learn, to grow from it. And it sounds like these bullies are just, I'm going to make you feel bad, and then I'm going to walk away, and you don't get to say anything about it. So, other than counseling or getting a coach, are you just stuck?
Well, before I forget, if you don't mind, and I
Go
will
ahead.
talk about what and remind me if I go on a tangent here.
Hmm,
But you
okay.
said it. You said it. When I talk about bully bosses, I talk about them being unreasonable. And what people think about unreasonable is, oh, they're hard to get along with. Well, I take the literal meaning of unreasonable. You cannot reason with them. You cannot talk to them. You cannot sit. And with this boss I was just talking about, there was no possible way that I could go to his office and say, hey, can we just talk this over? Can we sit down and have a comfortable conversation about what your concerns are and why I'm doing? Not a chance. And what's worse is also what you said is not just that they can't be reasoned with, but the silence. Oh, the silence is the absolute worst, where I'll give you another thing that happened to me. And even before I tell the quick anecdote, and I won't tell the full story, but one of the problems with being a bullying victim is when you tell family members what happened to you at work, or you tell a friend, the minute I even start telling you this, I'm like, oh, do I really want to say this? Because Laura Jane's going to wonder, what did Andy do wrong? He must be sugarcoating the story. Okay. And I write about this in my book because that's part of the problem of the shame and the taboo nature of this, because as a victim, you feel like anybody you tell what happened, they can't believe that a boss would act this way to a good employee. So anyway, I was going on an approved vacation with my fiance, now my wife of 24 years, to Costa Rica. And I was on the plane. It was before 9/11. So this goes back a little ways. But I got a call from the CEO's assistant who said, the boss wants you to get off the plane. Or where are you? I said, I'm on the plane. Get off the plane. I go, they're closing the doors. We're leaving in like 5 minutes or less. Hold on, let me check. I can't repeat exactly what he said. The assistant said, you know, expletive deleted, but he wants you to get off the plane. I had to go back to work. To this day, 20 years later, I don't know what I did wrong. I and he never spoke another word to me, the CEO. Never said
Did
a
he
word.
tell you why you needed to be there?
Nope. I had a show that I was putting together. It didn't have a real deadline. Uh, and his number 3 had said to me, "Andy, go ahead. I've got you covered." There was one thing left that had to be done. She's like, "I got it." And she said, "I'll take care of anything that comes up." That's a quote, Laura Jane. I'm convinced to this day that she sabotaged me, that somehow it came up, and maybe she brought it up to the CEO, and he's like, "Oh, is the tape almost done? Is the video almost done?" And I think she said, "Well, I don't know. Andy just left on vacation." That's the only thing that could have happened. She sabotaged me. She bullied me, and I lost my job 3 months later, and this is the absolute truth. I did nothing wrong. It was an approved vacation. I set everything up to finish. She promised that she'd take care of anything that came up, and that night, he pulled me off the plane and never spoke to me again.
Hmm.
So and I was ostracized. I wasn't officially demoted, but they took away the show that I was gonna do. You can't imagine the feeling of isolation, the feeling of just absolute shame, frustration, embarrassment. That was an extreme example, but these things happen all the time.
Yeah, and for me, they took a lot of my responsibilities away and gave them
Okay.
to new people, and
Yeah.
it's like I've done this correctly for 5 years now, and now you're just wanting to, and I know where it all came from, but it's
Okay.
you
Yeah.
don't feel at the time you don't know, you know,
I
and
could
you're
only
like,
guess. Yeah.
what happened? Why are you taking this away? It's been my baby."
Right.
And
And
it
this was
wasn't to give
uh-huh.
somebody else experience, it was
Yeah.
to take it away.
Yep, and in this case, they never spoke to me about it, they never explained, and then they gave my show that I was creating, it was my idea, they all loved it, to another producer. And so let me get to the issue a little bit of because you asked the question. So I don't help people figure out their boss, I don't help people how to make their boss contrite or how to make their boss their best friend or how to get their boss to apologize. I don't do any of that because I don't have the formula for that. If I did, I would present it, but I've never seen it. So here's what we can do, Laura Jane, and I know you do this in many of your episodes, in fact, maybe every one, where you're trying to help people deal with the difficulties and challenges of life, and your guests come on. I've listened to a lot of the episodes, and I want to contribute to the mental health of your listeners if I can. Um, and because I've lived this experience, and I had no tools, decades where I dealt with this with no tools. I just kept going forward. And resiliency is a great characteristic, but it's not necessarily healthy to be
Yeah.
resilient all the time. So, what can we do? We can save ourselves. We can take care of ourselves. We can work on, first of all, psychological safety. When I work with clients, that's the very first thing we work on is trying to feel safer. Now, and again, I can't guarantee that anybody that I work with or talk to, um, that they're not going to lose their job tomorrow. I would never tell them, don't worry, it'll be fine. Why would I say that? I don't know it to be true. What I know is true is that we can limit the effect that the bully boss has on us by first sitting down and talking about, you're okay. It's not a good situation, but we're okay. Okay. If we lose the job, we're going to talk about that. People lose their jobs. It happens, but you're going to be okay. Just like, again, if you go to the doctor and there's something not great, you have to take a step back, but there are ways to work through a bad diagnosis. Now, you got a bad boss. So we work on dealing with that bad boss. We start with psychological safety. We work on breathing, might suggest meditation. The main thing is to get the boss literally and figuratively almost off your back, out of your head. They're going to be there, but you can say to them when they're bullying you in your head or they're on your shoulder saying, you're bad, you're lousy, I'm going to fire your ass, whatever the bad things are, you suck. I think I can say that. I hope so.
You're fine.
Okay. Um, what we work on is we say, thank you for coming, bully boss. Appreciate it. You can leave now because I know better. I know that the way you make me feel is not truly who I am, even though you're making me feel this way. So then we work on self-esteem and self-worth because it's destroyed by these people. They destroy. A person called me the other day, a lawyer from the UK, talking to me about working with her. I wasn't on the phone for 5 minutes. Again, a lawyer of good standing. She started crying in the first 5 minutes. No, sorry, 5 seconds of the conversation. She started telling me her story and started crying. This is what bully bosses do to people. And so then, her self-esteem, horrible. She's got kids, husband, so she has some support, but she doesn't feel like they can really help the situation. So I hear it all the time. And so then we work on feeling safe first, not completely safe because you might lose your job. The bully might attack you the following day, but we start to put it in perspective. We start to focus on, well, who really are you? Do you have any friends? Do they like you? Why do they like you? Do you have family? Do you have faith? At your church, do they like you there? Does the minister or priest like you? Do your neighbors like you? Why? So, because the bully boss just takes over, Laura Jane. And so we need to put it in perspective that that's one person who has their own issues. And let me say this, bullies, it's about them, not us. They have a problem. They have an issue. And they're taking it out on us and it affects us, but that's what we try to remember in the work I do with people and what I've tried to work on myself, because I blame myself what's wrong with me? Why are they treating this way? I'm such a good person, I'm such a good worker. Am I cloying? Am I too ambitious? Am I annoying in some way? No. We also work on self-blame. So these are the first things we work on to begin the process of really remembering who we are and not allowing the bully boss. And this is the last thing I'll say about this particular thing. I dedicate my book to those that shed light on others. That's the dedication, not to my mom and dad, although they were wonderful, because what bully bosses do is they darken our lives. They darken our lives and we lose the light. And so what I work on with people is how to get their light back, because that's the most important thing, is to be able to get your light back and not let a bully boss darken your light.
Mhm. I had a boss that said, "If the people like you, you're not doing your job well enough." I was like, uh, for 20 something years, I have done my job really well.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be hated to do a good job. Why would someone think that,
Well,
you
and
know?
what does that say about them, Laura Jane? Like that, again, that's on them. Where
Yeah.
they get that, why they think that, that's a problem with them. Because you were in the corporate world, you did a great job from what I understand, and I'm sure people liked you. Again, you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be friendly all the time, you don't have to be in a good mood all the time, but those are the people that they come after. It makes them uncomfortable and they can't stand it.
Mm. Yeah, how do we I wanna fix everything, but you
Yeah.
can't fix them. All I can do is fix my response to their behavior, and that's a lot of responses to fix.
Yeah. It really is tough, and it's work. You're exhausted and look, I've talked to people who cried all the way into work. I've talked to people and corresponded with people that couldn't make it into work. I've talked to and corresponded with people who ended up in the hospital. And I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. I make that clear to everybody, but I've talked to people who are suicidal. Now, not when I was working with them. In the past, they became suicidal by virtue of the bullying. And that's why we need, and there's all kinds of efforts to create state laws. And you talked about it at the outset of the conversation. There's no laws against this unless you're part of a protected class. For instance, in my case, I'm over 55. So if I'm at work and someone says, "Hey, old man, we don't need any of you old people here, with old ideas, why don't you leave?" Okay, then I might have a case. But two things. First of all, no bully bosses do that. They're smart enough to know not, and even if they suggest something like that, it's a very hard case to prove unless it's that kind of outright and abrupt and obvious. But nobody does that really unless they're really a fool, And that's true with people who are disabled or your skin color, or your gender. But most bullying is much more subtle than that. It's just hostility in different ways. They've been trying for 30 years to get state laws passed to give employees some kind of recourse. They haven't passed yet. They're getting closer. But, and this is something that I talk about when I give speeches and in my writing that I do, tomorrow, people in your audience, especially those that run companies or are supervisors, managers, or any kind of employee, can go to their company and say, "Hey, I think, without complaining or whatever, but they can go tomorrow and say, we should have bylaws. We should have codified codes of conduct that everybody signs on to, like sexual harassment. Um, I coach in my community. I coach 5-year-olds playing basketball because I love little kids. And it's really more like babysitting. But I had to go through all this sexual harassment training. I'm not opposed to that. Do you think there was anything, not that I would be mean to, but there's other adults there and stuff. Do you think there was even one mention of how I should treat my colleagues? Nothing. Zero. Not a mention. What I'm arguing for is that everybody signs on, every employee signs on that I agree to follow these codes of conduct, being civil in the workplace, and you define what it is, and you define how you can identify it, just like you do with sexual harassment. So you understand what it is, what it is, what it isn't, all those things. And if you don't follow it, there's repercussions that HR has autonomy to look into it, to investigate. And it's part of your evaluation that if you as a manager or a boss don't adhere to the codes of conduct, then you'll lose your bonus, you could get demoted or fired. That's what we need to do today in this country. That's what we need to do. We need to create those kinds of things so everybody understands. You can have a bad day, you can yell, it's okay, you can raise your voice. I pounded some tables during my career, Laura Jane, not proud of it. I pounded some walls. I interrupted people. And I wasn't always nice, but I always repaired the relationship. I always apologized, and it didn't happen all the time. But I worried when I was writing my book, I started, maybe I was a bully boss. Oh my gosh. And I talked to Dr. Gary Namey, who's one of the founders in this company, really the founder of the Workplace Bullying Institute and the founder of this effort in the United States. And he went through it with me. He said, Andy, you are not and never have been a bully boss. So that's what we need to do. We need to make it a part of, and some companies are starting to do it. Avis has done this. Johnson & Johnson has done this. United Healthcare has done this. They actually have bylaws that people sign on to say, I'm going to comport myself in a way that is appropriate for our workplace. And we need all companies to do this.
But bylaws are only good as they are enforceable by the HR department. And I know where I had bylaws that you would be respectful, and you didn't matter how much they were reported. You were basically told those people were too valuable to let go.
Yep.
You know, the with sexual harassment, it's now a law where
Yep.
you're not going to do something about it inside the workplace. I have somewhere to go to help
Yeah.
protect myself. But these, you don't have that. So when
No.
you are interacting with someone who is being protected because they're so valuable, and, I agree, they probably had value, but I think they had more repercussions because they were there than the value that they were able to give, just because of how many people left, you know?
You're 100% right. In fact, in the work we do, we call it a brilliant jerk. I don't think I mentioned this before. A brilliant jerk. And look, first of all, bullies are not bullies all the time. We know that. They're not yelling and screaming all the time, but just the specter of it happening. You never know when it's going to happen, no matter how hard you work, how well you work. And so the brilliant jerk is usually the boss. They look good in their suit or their pantsuit, whatever it is. They may be a good salesperson. They may be great in a meeting, but you said it. They do some good things. They may do some very good things, but the harm they do to multitudes of people damages the business more than any contribution they can make. Now, they may line their own pockets ultimately. They may make a ton of money, and they may leave at some point with a buyout or whatever, but they've left the business in shambles. They've left people in shambles. As you said earlier, people leave, whatever. So the brilliant jerk, you're right. And absolutely, no law is any good if it's not followed, right, by the authorities. You have to have some repercussions. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't do any good to write up a bunch of things. You have to have the people at the very top saying, we're going to adhere to this. And look, I'm not suggesting that the minute something happens, somebody should be fired, but they have to know, if they know that it's not acceptable behavior, they're not going to keep doing it. They're just not. And the problem is that so many companies not only accept it, but some even kind of promote it like, oh, we're a competitive environment. This is a competitive environment. Well, look, we all compete. We all want the business to do well. We want to be appreciated and we want the business to keep going, because if it goes under, then I'm out of work. So this is in everyone's self-interest. This is not a Democrat or a Republican. This is not a blue or a red thing. This is not a black or white thing. This is not a gendered thing. Although I will say that women get bullied at greater rates, LGBTQI people can get bullied at greater rates, people of color often get bullied at greater rates. These things happen. But this is something that there's no reason anybody should be opposed to not only having bylaws, but having them really, really have traction such that everybody knows, allowed to have a bad day, but if I continually behave this way, it's going to hurt me. Everyone's self-interested. So if the manager, boss, supervisor knows that they can't get away with it, it'll trickle down. And we know this kind of stuff trickles down.
So, bylaws, advocate for those. I'm going to assume this organization, um, workplace bullying or however it was phrased, has some kind of sample bylaws that you can incorporate into your organization.
Oh, sure. And it really is commonsensical, right? And it's the kind of things that I've been talking about. You want to make people understand that tone of voice matters, that treating people civilly matters, that ideas matter, and these are the things you can list. And it can be a very simple document. It can be a one-page document. Because what happens is, and I was in, and still am, but I was in the communications business. And I would argue that even though television is considered the communications business, you're in the communications business, everyone's in the communications business. You can't identify for me, maybe monks, who evolve silence aren't in the communications business. But any business, anywhere, if you don't have good communication, you're going to hurt your business. And what happens when bosses or managers are mean-spirited for whatever reason, people stop communicating, they stop giving ideas, they stop collaborating, people start protecting their turf. And when that happens, and I saw this happen over and over and over again, it has a chilling effect. Now, and in my experience, I stopped going to the boss giving ideas because I didn't want to be yelled at or scoffed. And so if ideas stop flowing, you're just not going to get the most out of your business. So you want to have the bylaws where enumerate the ways you want people to conduct themselves. You want to be open to ideas. You want to be open communication. Obviously, the boss gets to make the final decision. That's fine. But you want to enumerate those things. And then you want to explain what the ramifications are for those that don't adhere to the policy. As you said, in sexual harassment, there's ramifications within the organization, but at least the employee they can hire a lawyer. In the case of bullies currently constituted, they really don't have that option. And that's why I find this a very interesting issue, one that I understand all too well, and one that I am very passionate about.
Very passionate. You come with a lot of energy towards it. So, um, so let's talk. There's not a solution other than we learn to respond. We learn to like ourselves. We learn to uh, not ignore it, but reframe it in our own bodies. And if you have to move on. So it's kind of this a little bit scary, but we do need safety. And how do
Mhm.
we feel safe? And there's a lot going on in that environment. So with all of that said, what is that thing that we can do about it? I mean, get help.
Yeah. Yep.
Learn to respond differently, but I think they need to know it's not their fault.
Right. So
So many
that
things we internalize and we think, oh, I did something wrong because I'm being treated badly. In these cases, when that person's like that, there is not a you did anything wrong.
yeah. So again, we talked about self-blame. I'll give you a couple other things that we all can do, and I continue to do it in my own life. Um, my heart used to beat so fast all the time because I was so anxiety ridden. Um, and so what I encourage people to do in terms of getting back that self-worth and self-esteem is find joy in your life where you can. You're not going to be gregarious and happy-go-lucky, but you can still find joy in your life. You can still take a walk in a garden, right? You can still appreciate the change of seasons. You can listen to the music you like, find a good book. Again, I would never suggest things that cost a lot of money. This stuff is free. Keep your eyes open for the joys of life. Appreciate the smile of a child, maybe your own child. Appreciate a supportive partner, you know. Um, these are things you have to get back to because you're not getting that at work. So it's a matter of finding joy in life and also, I would say, finding purpose in your work. Now, again, just because the bully boss is hurting you doesn't mean you can't celebrate small wins. Celebrate small wins. Celebrate a good collaboration with a colleague. Celebrate finishing a project. Even if the boss is mean about it, you did a good job. Celebrate those little things. Appreciate those things. Notice those things, even if the boss doesn't. And then the other thing is two quick things. Positive self-talk. You have to reorganize your brain. Again, thank you for coming, boss. Thank you for saying that horrible thing to me, whatever. Thank you for making me feel bad. You can leave now because I'm going to focus on who I know I am. And forgiveness is a big part of this. And then I'll get to the practical part. But forgiveness, forgive yourself because you did nothing wrong. And then this may take years, but you want to forgive the boss because if you're still fighting with the boss 5 months, 5 years, 10 years. I have recurring dreams still of the boss from 20 years ago. I used to have recurring nightmares while I was in his employ that he was kind of this monster in a boiling cauldron. I swear it's the truth. Recurring dream. And he was trying to kill me in a boiling cauldron. I still have recurring dreams about him, but I'm handling it better. Um, and then I would say this, I'll take my hat off. I have more experience in looking for work than I care to admit. Now, television tends to be transient. And I had some very good jobs that I'm proud of, but I had to look for work quite a bit. And so about psychological safety, there's nothing wrong at all with looking for a better situation because that'll also give you hope, and hope is a good thing. And I'll tell you something, I almost called my book, I Thought It Would Be Different, because when I went to every new job, I thought it would be different. And I thought, oh, thank God I got away from the bully boss. And this is why we need to work on ourselves because there's always somebody, there's always something. I've rarely talked to anybody who said, I look at my work as utopian. It's just great. Everybody's nice. Everybody's friendly. Everybody helps each other. It just really doesn't exist. You hope you have a good environment where people are all working towards a common goal, but there's going to be conflict. And so what I work on now, and I think I've made it clear in this interview, is don't think it's going to be different at the next place. And this is not about self-blame. This is about self-awareness. You can be different so that and it may not be a bully boss. Maybe it's just a colleague who's not particularly friendly or warm. Whoever it is, you can be different. Remember, it's them, not you. Right? And so when you go to the next opportunity, and I hope you do, I'm working with all kinds of people who are trying to get out of their situations, but it's hard. Not a lot of jobs available, all that. You can be different. You can not take it so personally, not let it overwhelm you, not let it take over your joy, and not let it darken your light. That's the way you want to be different because in every circumstance I found, the bully found me. And I just wish somebody had told me that, Andy, it's okay. It's not you, it's them. Keep going, buddy. You're going to be okay. And that's what we can do, Laura Jane. That's the formula. There's no formula for changing the boss, making work perfect and all that. But we can be better. We can handle it better.
And I agree that it's an inside job, not to get out of it,
Well
but
said.
to reground it into a state that you know your own worth and one person's opinion or 5. In our
Mhm,
case, there was more than one person that was being that way.
mhm,
Uh, you can, I would look at them and just go, I am so glad I wasn't raised in your household.
mhm,
It's just like, however you learned this behavior,
mhm,
I am thankful
mhm,
I wasn't there. And find those little glimpses of positivity, those
mhm.
things that make you feel like you can keep going on, and deep breaths, a lot of
Yeah,
meditation, and
yeah,
working with someone that can help you reword those thoughts that go through your head over and over and over again. And so there's hope, but there is not a way at this moment to make huge changes. There's no $1,000,000 lawsuits you can get out of it like there are for some other things. You
yeah,
just move on and don't let it hold you back. We're strong. We're able. We have the ability to rise above, and you don't have to play on their level. And I think the key is be you and don't play their game.
yeah, yeah. Don't play their game because and I tried, you know, but most of us that get bullied, Laura Jane, we're not good at the politics. And bullies, I had a bully boss who was number 2 person in the company. I was convinced that he spent his entire job thinking about ways that he could hurt the others, hurt us, and ingratiate himself to the boss. Like I didn't even know what he did. I know what his job was, and all I wanted to do was do good work. I didn't have the wherewithal, maybe I didn't have the intelligence, see, self-blame, of, um, trying to figure out how to play his game, of trying to do the chess game of moving the pieces around so that he couldn't get to me. I'm not good at that. And most of us that get bullied don't know really how to do that. We're not game players, we're workers, we're good workers. And so, right, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Trying to outsmart them, if you can do it, great. And please tell me how. I never figured that out. In fact, I write that the bullying for me during my career was like a freight train coming over the hill, where you see the steam, and you hear the train, then you see it and you're far away. And yet I could not figure out a way to get out of the way. I couldn't figure out a way to jump off the track, so to speak. It's a little dramatic perhaps, but I think the image is right. I had plenty of I saw it coming. I knew it was happening, and yet I still got nailed. But I looked at it too much in black and white, like, ugh, I failed. I thought my career was a failure because the bully bosses often, quote unquote, won. Well, again, what we're working on is not looking at it so black and white. I had a lot of successes. I won some awards. I got promoted, made some money, you know, and I think all the people in your audience, can do this because they can identify the good things about their work. They can identify the good things about what they're doing. They can identify the good people like you did. You said, I'm sure you like some of the people, and some of the people you were glad you weren't like them and so forth. But we also work on not looking at everything in black and white, that the boss is all powerful and all encompassing and everything else is horrible. It is horrible. Believe me, it's horrible. I know. But we can't let it overtake us. And we can find the good things both in our professional lives and in our home lives.
Okay, so here's the big question. How can our friend that's here with us,
Yeah.
if they are being bullied, how do they get a hold of you and say, hey, me too?
Well, first, what I'd like to do, and I got into this work, and I hope you'll appreciate this, is to get hugs. So I would say to our friend who's listening with us in our conversation, I'd like to give them a hug. Because that's the first thing I think a bully victim needs, and a hug from somebody that understands. Um, And in my work, I get lots of digital hugs from people who say, "Hey, Andy, thank you for that. Oh, that really resonated. That was helpful." So that's what I'm in this for. Um, if you're asking me how our listener can get further help if they want it, I can be reached at andyregal.com. That's my website. Um, I'm on LinkedIn at Andy Regal. And I do have a book coming out, and it's available. You can find it at my website. And I'd love for people to reach out because I just want to help, and I just want to make this an issue that is like a Me Too issue. I'm not trying to compare the two issues, but Me Too was the kind of thing of, well, women just have to deal with it, Laura Jane. It's part of the workforce. Women just have to deal with men saying things or touching them. That's just part of the job. And well, no, it's not part of the job. It never should have been part of the job. And finally, our society woke up and said, enough. Now, it still happens, but there's recourse. I want the same for people that have been damaged unfairly, unjustly, by people who are just looking to hurt them and don't have the sense to know that they're hurting their businesses too. So I'd love for people to reach out to me. If I can be helpful, I'd love to, and very much appreciate the opportunity to be with you to talk about this crucial issue.
Sounds great. So andyregal.com, the information is in the show notes. Sounds like, my wish is nobody has this problem and nobody will call you.
Well, that
But
people
I know
thought,
it's a problem.
yeah, it's not going away even with hybrid work. So I'm here, we're here, you're not alone. That's what I try to remind people. You're not alone, and there are resources, and I can help people find those resources.
Yeah, sounds great. So if we were to boil this down
Yeah.
to that one thing, what is that one thing somebody being bullied can do?
Yeah. Again, for fear of being redundant, but I have to say it is, remember your light. Remember who you are. Remember that you can continue to shed your light on others, and you can find people who will shed their light on you. That's what I'm trying to do, not always successfully, but boy, oh boy, my light was darkened for years and years because I didn't know how to cope and heal. You can cope and heal, you can enjoy life, and you can shed your light on others, which I think is the most important thing any of us can do. And those that are hindering our ability to do that, shame on you. And you too, if you're listening out there and you happen to be thinking about how you're treating people at work, you can start tomorrow. You can start tomorrow and be better. We can all be better managers, supervisors, and bosses. You can change, but you have to want to change, and you have to be aware.
Deep breath. Yes. There's a lot, and a lot to absorb. So get a hug.
Yeah, and I'm sending you one. Thank you.
If, and some of us may be opposed to hugs. Get a dog.
Well, again, if you don't
Dogs
want,
give good hugs.
it's okay. If you don't want to hug, just tell me. I don't want to invade anybody's personal space. I'm a hugger, but I understand, and I always ask first. Is it okay if I give you a hug?
Yeah. No, I just thought, I know there was time in my life where I was so sheltered, like walls up, that
Yeah,
any physical touching was just get out of my way. I don't trust.
yeah,
And
understood.
and so, animals, pets can help. So
Yes, they can.
find help.
Yes, but we want to be open to each other in any way that works. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Andy. I appreciate your time. S- your experience is going to help someone
Thank you. That's all I
say,
want to do. Laura Jane, thank
"It
you
was
so
me."
much. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
All right. Hey, friend, Andy and I are not medical or mental licensed professionals. We're here for entertainment, sometimes sad entertainment. But, when it hurts, let's get help. So follow the advice of your doctors and your therapists. And thank you for joining. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Laura Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss the next simple step that you can use to feel more confident And please leave an honest review.